All right, you beautiful motherfuckers, strap yourselves in, because this is not your grandma's book club.
Oh, no.
We're going deep into some seriously fucked up shit with Tom Wolfe's The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test.
That's right.
If you're easily offended.
Ah!
Tough shit, because we're holding nothing back.
Yeah, we're diving headfirst into the world of Ken Kesey and his Merry Pranksters.
Oh, yeah.
A bunch of psychedelic cowboys who set out to blow America's mind wide open with a whole lot of LSD and a big fucking question.
Okay, lay it on me.
What if reality is just a bunch of bullshit we've all agreed on?
Okay, let's unpack this motherfucker.
Right.
Ken Kesey, wrestler, Stanford, fellow author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The dude sounds like he had multiple personalities before even dropping acid.
Yeah.
What the fuck was his deal?
Kesey was a fascinating guy. He had early success with Cuckoo's Nest, but he got fed up with the literary scene and became obsessed with LSD.
Okay.
He saw it as a key to unlocking something deeper, a way to break free from the constraints of normal thinking.
And that's where the Merry Pranksters come in, right?
Exactly.
They weren't just some weekend hippies.
Oh, no.
These motherfuckers were like the original reality hackers.
Yeah.
Willing to go all the way down the rabbit hole.
Exactly. They were a motley crew of artists, writers, and free spirits.
Okay.
Folks like Neil Cassidy, the inspiration for Dean Moriarty and Kerouac's On the Road.
Right.
Mountain Girl, a force of nature, and Kesey's partner.
Yeah.
And Babs, an artist obsessed with Dayglow.
Uh-huh.
They believed in pushing the boundaries of consciousness, and they saw LSD as a tool for achieving that.
So they hopped on a fucking school bus.
They did.
And turned it into a psychedelic art piece.
Yes.
Talk about taking your show on the road.
Further, they called it a 1939 International Harvester school bus that became an icon of the counterculture movement.
Wow.
It was a rolling canvas covered in Dayglow paint, a mobile headquarters for their adventures as they crisscrossed the country.
Right.
Filming everything, turning their lives into a giant mind-bending experiment.
And they threw these legendary parties, the acid tests, right?
Yes, they did.
Like, what the fuck even went down at these things?
Imagine this: strobe lights, Dayglow paint everywhere.
Okay.
Bizarre music costumes straight out of a fever dream.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, plenty of LSD.
Of course.
These parties were like a grenade thrown into the idea of what a party could be.
Right.
A deliberate attempt to blow people's minds and create a collective consciousness.
It sounds pretty fucking radical for the time.
It was.
Did anyone even know what to make of these motherfuckers?
It was a huge challenge to the status quo. They were questioning everything, pushing back against societal norms and basically saying, fuck you to the establishment.
Wow.
Even Timothy Leary, the LSD guru himself, showed up at some of these parties.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the OG himself.
Yeah.
But wasn't there some tension between Kesey and Leary?
Yes.
Like, they weren't exactly on the same wavelength, right?
Definitely Kesey thought Leary was too focused on the individual on therapy. Kesey's vision was about something bigger, a shared experience, a merging of minds. He called it a collective consciousness, the idea that LSD could connect everyone on a deeper level.
So it was all about breaking free from the bullshit and tapping into some kind of universal mind meld.
Yeah, that was the idea.
Were they just high, or were they actually onto something?
That's the big question, isn't it? Were they just tripping balls,
Sorry.
or were they tapping into something real, something that most people are too afraid to even acknowledge?
Okay, so they're riding around in a psychedelic bus,
Right.
throwing mind-bending parties,
Yeah.
and challenging everything America holds dear. What could possibly go wrong? I'm guessing the cops weren't exactly thrilled with their whole turn-on, tune-in, drop-out philosophy.
You're right. Things were bound to get messy. Kesey had a few run-ins with the law getting busted for marijuana possession.
Oh.
Eventually, the cops raided his La Honda property, forcing him to flee to Mexico.
Oh, wow.
It was like a scene straight out of a goddamn movie.
So Kesey takes off for Mexico, leaving the pranksters to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
Did they just sit around twiddling their thumbs?
Oh.
Or did they continue the psychedelic crusade without their fearless leader?
The pranksters were never ones to stand still. They continued experimenting, pushing the boundaries of art and consciousness.
Okay.
They were a force to be reckoned with, even without Kesey at the helm. Their Mexican adventures are a whole other chapter in this wild saga.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a bit.
Hold on. Before we go south of the border,
Yeah.
I got to know more about what life was actually like for these pranksters.
Okay.
Was it all just one big acid-fueled love fest?
It was definitely more complicated than that.
Okay.
They lived communally sharing resources and pushing the limits of self-expression. There was a real sense of family, but also a lot of internal conflict. It was a pressure cooker of personalities.
Right.
And not everyone could handle the intensity.
Beautiful chaos and epic meltdowns. Sounds about right for a bunch of psychedelic pioneers living outside the rules.
They weren't afraid to experiment, to push boundaries to fail, and that's what makes their story so damn compelling.
Okay.
They were flawed, they were messy, but they were also pioneers blazing a trail into uncharted territory.
But they weren't just about dropping acid and freaking out, right?
Yeah.
They were creating art music, a whole counterculture movement.
Absolutely.
This wasn't just a party, it was a revolution.
Absolutely. Their influence went way beyond just getting high. They were instrumental in the birth of psychedelic rock, collaborating with bands like the Grateful Dead and Big Brother and the Holding Company.
Oh, wow.
They were writers, artists, musicians, social revolutionaries. They redefined art and left an indelible mark on the counterculture.
And what about the music? This wasn't just background noise.
Yeah.
These were the sounds of a generation tripping its balls off.
The pranksters understood the power of music to alter consciousness, to create shared experiences. They saw it as another tool for expanding minds, for connecting with something bigger than themselves.
Right.
Their collaborations with bands like the Grateful Dead were legendary, pushing the boundaries of sonic exploration and shaping the sound of a generation.
Okay, my mind is already blown, and we've only just scratched the surface of this shit.
Yeah.
But before we dive any deeper, let's talk about what ultimately led to the end of the acid tests.
Okay.
What made Kesey decide to pull the plug on these legendary gatherings?
Well, a few things were happening. The tests were getting increasingly chaotic, attracting unwanted attention from the authorities. Kesey also felt like the scene was losing its original intent.
Oh.
It was becoming more about spectacle and less about genuine exploration.
Because he had the whole legal shitstorm hanging over his head.
Exactly.
With the drug charges and having to skip out to Mexico.
He knew he couldn't keep pushing his luck.
Right.
The acid test graduation was his way of saying, we've done what we set out to do, now it's time for something new.
But knowing these motherfuckers, they couldn't just have a normal graduation ceremony, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
They had to go out with a bang.
The graduation was a mind-blowing spectacle, a final burst of psychedelic energy before the curtain closed on the acid test era.
Okay.
But we'll delve into the madness of that event in a bit.
All right, hold on to your hats, folks, because this ride is just getting started. We're about to dive deeper into the heart of the acid test, explore the rise of the Grateful Dead, and unravel the pranksters' infamous encounter with the Hells Angels.
Mm-hmm.
Stay tuned, because shit's about to get real weird.
Oh, yeah. All right, so we left off with Kesey on the lam in Mexico, the pranksters back in the States, and the whole acid test scene reaching a fever pitch. This is where shit gets really interesting. The pranksters weren't content with just tripping out.
Right.
They wanted to take their psychedelic revolution to a whole other level.
And what better way to do that than by teaming up with the most notorious biker gang in America?
Oh, yeah.
The fucking Hells Angels. Talk about a culture clash.
That's right.
Were they just asking for trouble?
Kesey saw something in the Angels that most people didn't. A raw energy, a rejection of societal norms that mirrored the pranksters' own ethos. He thought of that by bringing these two worlds together. They could create something truly powerful, something that would shake the foundations of straight America.
But the Angels weren't exactly known for their peace and love vibes, were they?
Yeah.
More like brawls, booze, and bad attitudes.
True. They had a reputation for being wild and unpredictable.
Yeah.
But Kesey believed he could bridge the gap between their worlds.
What?
He thought through shared experiences, through the power of psychedelics, they could find common ground.
So did it work?
Well,
Did the Angels actually buy into this whole 11-piece bullshit?
it was a complex relationship.
Okay.
There were moments of genuine connection where the Angels seemed to embrace the pranksters' message of unity and expanded consciousness. They even participated in some of the acid tests, adding their own brand of chaos to the mix.
I can only imagine the shit that went down when those two worlds collided.
Oh, yeah.
It must have been a total fucking circus.
It was wild. There were parties, pranks, run-ins with the law,
Right.
and definitely some tension. The Angels had their own code, their own way of doing things.
Yeah.
And it didn't always align with the pranksters' more peaceful ideals.
Okay, but let's be real. The Hells Angels were notorious for their violence.
Right.
Did that ever spill over into the prankster scene?
I mean,
Did things ever get dangerous?
There were definitely some hairy moments.
Uh-huh.
Kesey was walking a tightrope trying to keep things from spiraling out of control.
Yeah.
But remember, he had this charisma, this ability to connect with people from all walks of life.
Right. It sounds like he was playing with fire.
Yeah.
It's no wonder he ended up back in Mexico trying to escape the whole goddamn mess.
Well, the pressure was on. The authorities were cracking down on the counterculture.
Yeah.
The acid tests were attracting unwanted attention.
Uh-huh.
And the angels were becoming increasingly unpredictable. Kesey needed a chance to regroup.
So he splits from Mexico again,
Yeah.
leaving the pranksters to their own devices.
He did.
Did they just fall apart without their fearless leader?
Not at all. The pranksters were resilient motherfuckers. They continued to experiment, push boundaries, and spread their message. They organized their own acid tests, collaborated with new bands, and documented everything, creating this incredible archive of the psychedelic era.
And let's not forget the music.
Oh, yeah.
The pranksters were instrumental in the birth of psychedelic rock, helping to launch the careers of some of the biggest names in the scene.
Mm-hmm.
The Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane.
Right.
These weren't just bands, they were cultural forces.
Absolutely. The pranksters were at the forefront of a musical revolution. They understood the power of sound to alter consciousness,
Right.
to create shared experiences, to transport you to another dimension.
Totally.
Their collaborations with these bands were legendary, pushing the boundaries of sonic exploration.
But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, right?
Right.
This whole psychedelic scene had a dark side too.
Yeah.
Bad trips,
Yeah.
breakdowns, overdoses.
That's true. They were pioneers exploring uncharted territory, and there were casualties along the way. Some people couldn't handle the intensity of the experience.
Right.
Some got lost in the chaos. Some paid the ultimate price.
So we've got Kesey down in Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
the pranksters holding down the fort,
Yeah.
and the Grateful Dead blowing minds with their sonic alchemy.
Right.
But did their message actually resonate beyond their own little psychedelic bubble? Did they actually change anything?
Their influence was undeniable. The acid tests, the bus, the music,
Yeah.
it all seeped into the mainstream, shaping the counterculture and influencing everything from art and fashion to politics and spirituality. They helped create a space for alternative thinking, for
Yes.
challenging the status quo.
But were they just a bunch of privileged hippies preaching a message that was irrelevant to the struggles of everyday people? Did they actually make a difference in the grand scheme of things?
That's a debate that's still going on.
Okay.
Some say they were just self-indulgent dropouts.
Right.
Others see them as visionaries who helped usher in a new era of consciousness.
So what's the verdict?
It's not that simple.
Okay.
Their legacy is complex. They challenged conventions, expanded consciousness, and inspired countless others to question the status quo.
Okay.
But they also faced internal conflicts, made mistakes, and left behind a trail of broken dreams. It's a messy, complicated story.
Right.
Just like life itself.
Okay. My head is spinning. This whole thing is a goddamn roller coaster ride. We need to dive into the acid test graduation.
Okay.
That final spectacle before Kesey's exile seems like a pivotal moment in their story.
It was the culmination of everything they'd been working towards, a final explosion of psychedelic energy.
Right.
They were masters of creating these immersive, mind-bending experiences, and the graduation was their masterpiece.
Let's get into it. What the fuck actually went down at the acid test graduation? Paint me a picture.
Imagine a warehouse packed with hundreds of people,
Okay.
all tripping balls with the pranksters, orchestrating the symphony of sound, light, and psychedelic energy.
Oh, wow.
It was controlled chaos, a collective journey into the depths of consciousness.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It was intense, for sure. Kesey wanted to create a transformative experience,
Yeah.
a final test for those who were ready to take the next step in the psychedelic revolution.
A final exam for all the acid heads. Were there any casualties?
There's this one image from the graduation that always stuck with me in the middle of all this madness.
Uh-huh.
There's a kid crying his eyes out, completely overwhelmed by the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
It's a poignant reminder that even in the hands of experienced guides like the pranksters,
Right.
the psychedelic experience can be unpredictable and even frightening.
So even in their farewell, there's this element of chaos,
Yeah.
of the unknown. What about Kesey? Was he there in the thick of it, orchestrating everything?
He was present, but in a different way. He had retreated from the spotlight,
Okay.
choosing to observe and guide from a distance like a conductor leading an orchestra of madness.
So the acid test graduation was like a final transmission from Kesey before he disappeared into the Mexican wilderness. A passing of the torch to the next generation of psychedelic explorers.
Exactly. He was saying, I've shown you the way. Now it's up to you to find your own path.
Okay, my brain is officially fried. We've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to explore. The legacy of the acid tests.
Okay.
Did they really change the world, or were they just a bunch of acid-fueled freaks making a lot of noise?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Did they spark a revolution or just create a temporary escape from reality?
Right.
We'll delve into all that and more when we come back. Don't touch that dial, motherfuckers.
All right, we've been digging deep into this whole electric Kool-Aid acid test thing. But let's talk about the aftermath.
Okay.
Did the acid tests and the whole psychedelic scene actually change the world? Or was it all just a big, beautiful, fucked up trip that ultimately faded away?
It's a question that's been debated for decades. Did they spark a revolution? Or just create a temporary escape from reality?
Right.
It's not an easy answer.
Well, let's break it down. What was their lasting impact, if any? Did they leave a dent in the universe, or did they just get high and make a lot of noise?
Their influence is undeniable. They were pioneers,
Okay.
pushing the boundaries of art, music, and consciousness. They helped to create a space for alternative thinking, for questioning authority, and for embracing new forms of expression.
But weren't they just a bunch of privileged hippies preaching a message that was irrelevant to the struggles of everyday people? Did their psychedelic escapades actually make a difference in the real world?
That's a valid criticism.
Right.
The pranksters were primarily a white middle-class group, and their experiences didn't necessarily reflect the realities of those facing poverty, discrimination, and social injustice.
So were they just a bunch of self-indulgent dropouts playing at Revolution while the real world burned?
It's more complicated than that. The pranksters were driven by a genuine desire to expand consciousness, to break free from societal constraints, and to create a more just and equitable world. They may not have always succeeded, but their efforts inspired countless others to question the status quo and to demand a better future.
So they were flawed, they were messy,
Yeah.
but they were also catalysts for change.
Exactly. Their legacy is complex and multifaceted. They challenged conventions, inspired creativity, and helped to shift cultural paradigms. They may not have achieved utopia, but they left behind a world that was a little more open, a little more tolerant, and a little more willing to embrace the unknown.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. The pranksters weren't just about dropping acid and having a good time.
Right.
They were about pushing the limits of what it means to be human, to experience the world in all its messy, chaotic, and beautiful glory.
They were about expanding consciousness, about breaking free from the limitations of the rational mind, about embracing the mystery and wonder of existence. They were about exploring the frontiers of perception and inviting others to join them on the journey.
But was it all just bullshit? A fleeting moment of madness that ultimately faded into oblivion?
That's a question that each individual has to answer for themselves, but one thing's for sure. The pranksters left an indelible mark on the world. They challenged conventions, inspired creativity, and opened up new possibilities for human experience.
So they were more than just a bunch of acid-dropping hippies.
They were pioneers, explorers, and cultural provocateurs. They were flawed, they were messy, but they were also visionary. They helped to shape the counterculture movement, and their influence can still be felt today in everything from art and music to spirituality and social activism.
Okay, my brain is officially fried.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this wild and crazy story. The pranksters were a force of nature, a whirlwind of psychedelic energy that challenged everything we thought we knew about reality.
They were a product of their time, a reflection of the social and cultural upheaval of the 1960s.
Right.
But their message of liberation, self-discovery, and expanded consciousness continues to resonate today.
Yeah.
Reminding us that there's always more to explore, more to experience, and more to discover about ourselves and the world around us.
All right, one last question before we wrap things up. What would you say is the most important takeaway from this whole pranksters saga?
Okay.
What's the lesson here for those of us who are still trying to navigate this crazy, fucked up world?
I think the most important takeaway is that we have the power to choose our own reality.
Okay.
We can choose to conform, to follow the rules, to play it safe, or we can choose to break free, to challenge conventions, to explore the unknown.
So it's all about embracing the chaos, about finding your own path, and about creating your own reality.
Exactly. The pranksters showed us that anything is possible if we're willing to open our minds, to challenge our assumptions, and to embrace the unknown. They reminded us that life is an adventure, a journey of discovery, and that we have the power to shape our own destiny.
All right, you beautiful fuckers. That's for this deep dive into the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test.
Yeah.
We've explored the wild world of Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters, Their psychedelic adventures, their encounters with the Hells Angels, their legendary acid tests, and their lasting impact on the counterculture movement. And beyond, it's been a trip, a mind-bending exploration of a time and place where anything seemed possible.
We've laughed, we've cringed,
Yeah.
we've questioned our own sanity along the way, but hopefully we've also gained a deeper understanding of the power of the human spirit to challenge conventions, to break free from limitations, and to create something truly unique and transformative.
So what's the final verdict? Were Kesey and the Pranksters just a bunch of bullshit artists, or were they genuine revolutionaries?
I think they were a bit of both. They were flawed, they were messy, but they were also visionary. They challenged us to think differently, to live differently, and to see the world with new eyes, and that's a legacy worth celebrating, even if it's a little bit fucked up.
All right, you beautiful motherfuckers. Go out there and create your own reality. Embrace the chaos, challenge the status quo, and never stop searching for your own truth. And remember, as Kesey himself once said, further.
Further indeed.
That's it for this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay weird, and don't be afraid to get a little fucked up along the way.
Peace out.